right at 12:03, so I want to make sure we are, cognizant of your time. I appreciate your time. So I'm going to jump in. I always like to say thanks for being here, welcome for being here, and also congratulations for being here. And I really mean that. We all have crazy busy days. We were just talking about that. It's kind of a rainy day. So the fact that you're here today, taking time out of those busy days to learn more about, in this case, Social Security planning, I think says a lot about you. I love this presentation talking about Social Security. I know that sounds kind of crazy. I might have something wrong with me to want to talk about Social Security. But why that is I think it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make. There's a lot that goes into Social Security, but when you boil it down, the fundamental question of Social Security is, when should I turn on Social Security? When should I do that? Should I turn it on at my what's called full retirement age, your FRA? And we'll learn about that a little bit today. Should you turn it on as early as age 62, but take maybe a reduced benefit? You guys can see my drawings. Does that work for you guys? Or should you wait until age 70 and take an increased payment for life? So that's really the fundamental question. There's a lot that goes into that. It can get a little intimidating, but we'll try to figure out really how to maximize the benefits for yourself. And that's what it's all about. So before I kind of get into things, I see you guys are all new faces. I don't believe I've been in any of my presentations before. I also see a bunch of new names online as well. So welcome. It's good to meet some new faces. So I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, our firm, and kind of the connection here to K-Chip, and then we'll get into it. So just bear with me a minute. And so again, my name is Ryan Hitchcock. I'm a financial planner. My day-to-day job is a fiduciary financial planner, financial advisor. I work with clients on a day-to-day basis. I've been doing this just about 15 years and mostly work with clients near retirement or just right at retirement. So that's why we do a lot of Social Security planning. You can read a lot about me either, online. I do a podcast called Financial Breakaway, A Clear Path to Retirement. My website, our Hitch there. So that's kind of all in those packets that you have if you want to learn more about me. About our firm and some other names that you might see here. So you see High Point Capital Group, you see Bridge, and then what's our connection here with Capco and K-Chip. So if I first start with High Point Capital Group, that's our firm. High Point Capital Group, we're an independent fiduciary. We call it financial planning and wealth management practice. We are based here in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. We have offices all across Wisconsin. We have over 25 advisors right now. We have just over closer to $2 billion altogether that we manage. And mostly what we do is work with individuals and families with investment management, financial planning, retirement planning, protection planning. That's kind of what I say, that's what we do. Who we are, though, is what's brought us all to High Point is we're educators. We've been educating inside either corporations or in our community going back decades. We just retired an advisor who was doing this thing that we call financial wellness literally about 30 years ago at Miller Coors, before it was actually called financial wellness. And so what financial wellness is our program is called Bridge. And so we use Bridge as a program. It's an education program, financial wellness education program. We do it inside corporations kind of as part of their benefits package, or we do it in places like this. It's kind of a hybrid with K-Chip. That's why I love it here. And for those of you online who don't know, K-Chip is kind of the acronym for the Kazmarek Center for Human Performance. It's a great place for community learning and wellness. And so we do sometimes have community members as well as Capco employees or Capco enterprises. And so that's really the three names you kind of see. I kind of always talk about, I always kind of joke, I'm not in this picture, so I like to draw myself in here. This is our trip to, we did a firm trip to Lambeau. And I say we have mostly Wisconsin offices, but we do have an office in Illinois. So that guy decided to wear his Bears jersey to our Lambeau Field event. So in this financial wellness program, I've been doing it here at the Kazmarek Center for just over a year. And every time we do presentations, I ask people what they want to learn about more. I want to bring some topics to the table about what people want to learn about. And so that's where these topics are coming from. I call these topical conversations or topical workshops. So today we're obviously talking about Social Security. A couple of weeks ago, I did like a wealth accumulation 101. There's a variety of demographics in this area, so we try to hit on a little bit of everything. And so we'll talk about how we can do that as well. My commitment in these, it's very important. I'm here to just educate. Anything we talk about today is just going to be basic and comprehensive financial planning material. You're not going to hear any products talked about, any specific recommendations, nothing like that. The only thing we do offer, and we know, is that it's funny how the numbers work, is about 60% of people in person, about 50% of people online will raise their hand and say, Ryan, how do I take this information we've talked about and apply it to my personal situation? Everybody's different. And so we'll offer a complimentary consultation after this workshop. Blowing through these quick. I know these are what I call the housekeeping items, but what you'll get in these consultations is we'll build you a financial plan. Kind of two part. If people just have kind of low hanging fruit questions, I say we'll answer those questions in a consultation. Or if you want us to build you a financial plan, a retirement plan, we'll do that for you. There's no cost to do that. That's kind of the built-in agreement that I have here through K-Chip. Financial planning, if you've never done one, we can build out cash flows, kind of retirement income planning, what if scenarios, tax calculations, all of that. We usually charge about $1,500 to $2,000 to even do these if somebody comes in off the street. And those will be yours to keep if you want to do that. Since this is a Social Security presentation, we also have Social Security software that I'll offer to do. Some people just want to say, hey, let's run my numbers, do an analysis on my claiming strategies, and we can run that for you too. There'll be no cost to that. That'll be kind of included. So always note this on the beginning of webinars and in person, as well as sometimes people jump off webinars. So how you get to do these consultations is this evaluation sheet. So each of you guys here have an evaluation sheet in your package. You can check right at the top here. Yes, Ryan, I want to do a consultation. I'll get in touch with you in about a day or so, and we'll set that up on your time and your schedule. If you check no, I'm not here to spam you or hound you down at all. That's just not what we do. The other important part of this evaluation sheet is to give me some feedback on I call it two things. One is just how did you like the presentation, the material, me, and then secondly, what else do you want to learn about? And so that's how I keep building this program out, like I was just talking about. And so for those of you online, you will get this emailed to you right after the workshop. All right, so let's jump into it. Thanks for bearing with me about a little bit who I am and our connection here and the consultations and agenda. So today we're going to spend a lot of time. I'll give you the rundown. I'm going to try to get this done in about 40 minutes, just as an FYI. We're going to spend most of the time here. First thing, we're going to understand the basics of Social Security. Like, how does it actually work? How do I get my numbers and what's behind them? And we're going to talk about the current state of Social Security. This has really become a new thing I've added to this presentation. And what I mean by that, I'll just throw out the question. Is Social Security going to be there for you guys when you retire? Let's hope so, right? A lot of times, maybe with a little, some people, there's a lot of scare tactics online in the news that Social Security is going to run out. What does that really mean? Is it going to be there for people? So I'll hit on that and make sure we understand the reality of that. We'll jump into some optimal claiming strategies. That's the meat and potatoes of it. I'm going to give you a little intermission here. I'll give you a little metaphorical story just to break up, a lot of this can be a little mind numbing. So just to kind of do a palate cleanser, and then we'll end on some spousal benefit options and maybe a little taxation. So we're going to kind of blow through it. Feel free to ask any questions as you're going through, and same thing online. If you have any questions, I'll try to catch them as I'm going here. So let's jump into the basics of Social Security. There's really two things you need to know about the basics of Social Security. This first thing is called this full retirement age. So I kind of alluded to this right at the beginning, but we call this your FRA, your full retirement age. This is the age that Social Security says you can start to take your Social Security. And so we'll talk a lot about that. Turn on Social Security, take your Social Security. That means you're actually getting a monthly payment, right? At your FRA, that's the amount you can get a full payment or unreduced payment from Social Security. Now, that age you can do that is somewhere between age 66 and 67. For most people now, we're getting into your full retirement age is probably close to 67. So you can turn on Social Security earlier than 67. Like I mentioned earlier, you can turn it on as early as 62, or you can turn it on as early as 70. If you turn it on earlier, meaning earlier than your FRA, so like at 62, you're going to get a reduced amount than you would have gotten at your FRA. If you turn it on later, so after your FRA, you're going to get an increased payment. So most people understand that concept, but it's good to just make sure we know we're on the same page. The second thing, it's not as important, but some people are curious, like, how is your benefit actually calculated? And so what they do, if we simplify it, is they take your highest 35 earning years. So they take your highest 35 earning years, they put a little indexed to inflation on that. They then average it and they add this little special formula, kind of their secret sauce to give you that monthly number. So that's how it works. They take your 35 highest earning years, basically, is what you're getting. You have to have at least 10 years of working history to build up enough credits to turn on Social Security. So those are the two, basics of Social Security. So let's kind of look at some, I like this example. I'm going to run through kind of an example through the whole presentation of Social Security, but let's start with, like, what if we take it earlier? What does it actually look like if we take it earlier than our FRA? So as I mentioned, so FRA, most people it's going to be age 67, but you can turn it on as early as 62. If you do this, you're actually going to get a reduction in benefits of about 25 to 30%. So I'm going to throw an example at you. I know this is really small maybe to look at here, but I'll kind of talk you through it. And so this is just a bar graph showing the monthly Social Security numbers based on somebody that has, I'm going to call this our goalpost, a 67-year-old that's going to have a benefit or Social Security benefit of $2,000. If they take it earlier, so this is age 66, age 65, 432, age 62. So if they turn it on at age 62, they're going to get $1,400 a month compared to what they would have had at age 67 of $2,000. And so the math is telling us that this difference is 30% difference. So when you put some numbers to it like that, like percentage numbers, it is a pretty big drop. However, you're getting it for a longer period of time. So the question is this good or not? That's something we're going to explore. Now, if you look at the opposite side of the coin here, what happens if you wait? So if you have your full retirement age, again, I'm going to keep pounding this into us, is age 67. If you delay your credits, they call it, or wait, you can wait until age 70. And what happens is you get an 8% increase each year you wait. So our little goalpost, age 67, somebody's 67 years old, they could turn on their Social Security for $2,000 a month. Each year they wait past age 67, they're going to get an 8% increase. So 8%, 8%, 8%, all the way up to age 70, which is the max. You have to turn it on at age 70. And so if you do the math there, you're going to get a 24% increase by waiting until age 70. So again, should we do this or should we not? That is the question. This slide is one of my favorite slides. It puts all of those kind of bar graphs, those options right on one chart. And so basically gives you all your options right here at one. So I'll kind of talk you through this a little bit. If we go back to age 67, this is our middle goalpost. We already determined that if you're 67 years old, so your full retirement age, you're going to get $2,000 a month of Social Security. If you wait, we just talked about, you can get up to a 24% increase if you wait till age 70. We also already figured out that if you go early, up to age 62, down to age 62, that's going to be a 30% loss from age 67 to age 62. But if we look at the aggregate, like what is the difference between all our options? The difference between turning it on at 62 or 70 is actually a 77% increase. Kind of a big number, right? Surprising, anybody? Is any of these numbers surprising to anybody? Or they are what they are, or we're learning about them, right? Okay. So 77% increase from turning it on at 62. But what you have to think about is if you do turn it on at age 67, you're actually getting, I think, 8 more years, if I can draw, count, and talk at the same time, 8 more years of payments by doing this. So $1,400 a month. If I turn it on at age 62, if you're following, $1,400 a month for 8 years. That's about $135,000 that you've earned before the person that it would have ever turned it on at 70. So those are the things we're kind of looking at figuring out, right? Kind of interesting. Okay, so those are the basics of Social Security. So we just talked about like how our Social Security work, how is it calculated? What's my full retirement age? What's the difference if I turn it on earlier or later from there? That's what we're trying to figure out. So let me change gears a little bit and just talk on the health of the system of Social Security. This is kind of one of my soapbox items, I'd say, on Social Security because there's a lot of misinformation out about there, almost scare tactics in some worlds as well. But here's what's really going on. My numbers are a little out of date from 2021 into 2021, but the premise still applies. So I'm a terrible drawer, but I like to draw as I talk here. Essentially, what's going on is if I draw a retired person up here enjoying the sun, there's a lot more retired people earning Social Security than there are people at work. If I can draw somebody at work at a desk working. So essentially, there's more people getting money from Social Security. So if this is Social Security, they're getting money from Social Security than there are people paying into the system. And so if we look at those numbers down here, the Social Security Trust Fund, they call it, has, but in our example, $2.75 trillion into it. The working class right now is putting in 943 billion, but it's kicking out to the retirees already over $1 trillion. So this is what we call it's being underfunded. And so if this continues being just underfunded as is today, this is where you'll hear that Social Security is going to be gone by 2035, or it's going to run out by 2035. And so what would happen if this did happen? So like by 2035, these numbers, this $2.7 trillion bucket would be gone in 2035. And what would happen then, it would just be basically a cash in and a cash out system, and the retirees would only get 79 cents on the dollar for their Social Security. That's how the current system sits. This is the reality of it. In my opinion, this isn't what's going to really happen. There'd be anarchy on the streets if Social Security basically got cut in 2/3, right? So what's going to happen in the future of Social Security? There's a lot of stuff going on. It's in the hands of the government and Congress, but they get that main premise that they can't just let that happen. They can't just let Social Security go down to that cash in, cash out problem, in my opinion. I never say never, right? But here's some things going on inside the government that they can do. So right now, we pay 6.2% on payroll taxes for Social Security and stuff. If you're working at Capco here, you might get, as a W-2 employee, you pay half of that. So you'll see on your wages, 3.2% kind of goes towards this, and then your employer pays the other 3.2. They could raise that tax. That could increase the money going to that bucket. I think this is a really interesting one. Most people don't know this, but they have a wage base for Social Security. And what that is it's 168,000. So if somebody's making 168,000, let me put it this way. If somebody's making 500 grand, and there's a lot of people making a lot of money, they only get taxed on Social Security up to 168 grand. Did we know that at all? Yeah. So if they raise that amount, there's some discrepancy there that people making a lot more money could pay more into the system. So that's something they're really working on. They might raise the retirement age. So that might be for people even young, like my kids, maybe like, okay, you can't retire. Your full retirement age might be 70 instead of 67, things like that. There is a cost of a living adjustment for inflation on Social Security. They can adjust those. They could do this earliest age eligibility. So instead of 62 being the age, maybe for a younger generation, it might be 65 or 67. Or they can make the benefits kind of calculated a little bit differently. My point is, I wouldn't think of the scarce tactics of Social Security being a big issue, especially for people, we've talked even, closer to retirement potentially, especially for you. All right, so we're moving along. We talked about the basics and the health of the system, but let's get into determining your optimal age. So we kind of reviewed this, but there's really three things you can do. You can either turn it on at this FRA, which I'm thinking we're all understanding now, which is either 66, but mostly 67 for people, early as 62, or wait till 70. And I would earmark this slide as well. Again, you'll get these slides after the presentation. These are kind of like I call them I'm still workshopping this. I call it my social security checklist. Does that work? My joke work? Social security. These are my 6 checklists, 6 items that we have to check to figure out how or when you should take Social Security. So what I mean by that, this is the checklist. So you have to figure out what's your full retirement age? What's that number? And what is your benefit going to be? So we just talked about that. So we can check that off. How much of your future benefit is going to be affected if you turn it on early or later? So run your own numbers. We figured that out already. Then you need to figure out and talk to yourself and your spouse, how long am I going to live? That's really a big question of Social Security. And obviously we have no idea how long we're going to live, but you should start to think about this of like your life expectancy. Look at your family history and your health. Those are simply 2 big things you need to figure out in Social Security, because that'll determine if you should turn it on earlier or later. We'll talk more about that. Should you continue to work while taking Social Security? Some people want to work in their 60s, all the way up to 70. Should you work and turn on Social Security? You can do that. There's some trade-offs to do that. And then really, what other assets do you have? If you have more assets, more 401ks, IRAs, money on the side, that gives you some flexibility as well of when you should obviously turn on Social Security. And then how is your spouse affected? So those are my social security checklist. All right. I'm still working on that name, so bear with me on that. All right, so let's go through that checklist a little bit. So again, we already went through the first 2. This is kind of call it number 3 of how long are you going to live and how long is retirement going to last? That name or that kind of idea is synonymous. You don't have a crystal ball for how long you're going to live, but again, if you figure out your longevity of your family and your health, you can start to think about this a little more clear. If we look at some numbers by the Social Security Administration, they run some tests on this or some numbers on how long people are living. And they say about 1 in 3 people that retire at age 65. So 1 in 3 65-year-olds is going to at least live to age 90. So you have a 33% chance you're going to live to age 90 if you retire at 65. That's what that's saying. And that goes on to say you have a 1 in 7 chance of living to 95. So that's a 14% chance. So that means it could be a long retirement. If you retire at 65, right, all the way till 90 or 95, that's a 25 to 30-year retirement. Let me ask you a question. Anybody heard of this term centenarians? Centenarian is somebody that's 100 years old. Throw out a guess. How many centenarians do you think are in the U.S. today? Any guess?
About 7.
About 7? Any other guess?
300 million people. So we're talking, according to that, 14% are going to hit 95. So I'd say 2% are going to hit 100.
You must be in math. It's not quite that. They have about 100,000. They're thinking, yeah. You're close. You're right on the math. The numbers drop off between 95 and 100. The numbers drop off huge, but they have 100,000 theoretically right now. It can't be a perfect. They don't know exactly, but the projections and what I'm kind of interested to learn is by the year 2050, there's going to be over 500,000. So coming up here, that number is going to keep coming. I'm sorry, 2025. I said 2050. By 2025 coming up. So about, I did miss that up. 2050. Sorry. First answer was right. 2050, about 500,000. So people are living longer, and you have to take that into account of your own plan. We have medicine and health has become a little bit better and all that. Okay. Break even point. So we're talking about how do you figure out these variables of your life and determine your optimal claiming age. I think this slide is very important, or this idea, break even points or crossover points as we talk about. And I know it's kind of a lot of numbers on a slide, might be a little small to look at, but again, I'll talk you through it. But this concept, I think, is what really hits home when I'm talking to people in everyday life, in real world, about Social Security planning. So if I kind of talk you through it, if we look at the blue line, let me get my pen back. So the blue line is if you turn it on at age 62. So you turn it on earlier, and if you live to 95, you would have taken 969,000 from Social Security payments. That's inflated with just a 3% inflation rate. If you turn it on at age 67 and live to 95, you're going to take in 1.2 million. And if you wait till 70, you're going to take in 1.4 million. So it's obvious once you start talking about this that if you live longer, you're going to get more income from Social Security if you take it at 70 because that payment's going to be bigger. However, we don't know how long we're going to live. So I think this crossover or break-even points idea helps people put it into perspective. So if we just focus on this part, like where do these lines actually cross over? That helps you kind of see. So if we say, what's the difference, or when do you actually start to make more money from Social Security by waiting to turn it on later? And it kind of compares these, and hopefully I'm making sense. So this is saying if you compare age 62 versus 67, you won't make more money until age 76, excuse me, by waiting longer. Does that make sense? I know that's kind of confusing. So I'll say it again in a different example. So let's say somebody is 62 years old. So they're taking payments a lot longer than somebody that waits till 70. That's what that's saying. So they've built up a lot of money from Social Security before that person at 70 is even taking any. You're taking a less amount per month than the person that's going to take it at 70. And eventually those numbers got to cross. And so at age 62 comparison to age 70, you're not going to make more money from Social Security by the time you reach 78. This last example is a more real world example that I see a lot of people kind of the light bulb clicks, because most people are thinking right around, 67, or should I wait till 67 or should I go later? And so the difference between 67 and 70 is the crossovers at age 81. So I think in my experience, that crossover point's a little later in life than people think it is. And what you take from this is that, or you should think about from this, is when do I want my money from Social Security? Do I want it earlier in my retirement, or do I want more money later in my 80s and 90s? I'm not directing people one way is not better than the other, but most of the time in my experience, people are like, well, I kind of want my money earlier than later. So even though the numbers always say in Social Security planning, Social Security analysis is even on our software, if we run it, if you run it till age 95, it's always going to tell you age 70 is going to be the optimal age because that's when you make the most money, but that's a little deceiving. Questions on that? I think it's a really important topic. Make sense a little bit? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to another checklist, like what if you work during retirement, or what if you work while taking Social Security? So you can take Social Security while you work. So the answer is yes, you can take Social Security while you work, but they're going to draw a line basically at your full retirement age. Everything's revolving around that full retirement age. If you're under your full retirement age and you take Social Security, your Social Security might be reduced by the government a little bit. And I'll talk about that in a second. So if you're older than your full retirement age, they don't take any away from you on there. You don't get penalized per se at all. So I'm going to pull this slide up. Again, numbers are really small for y'all, but what I'm looking at here is some targets on either before or after your full retirement age. If you turn on Social Security, we already determined that you can before your full retirement age. What's going to happen is they have this income limit. So in 2024, it's not a big limit, but it's $22,320. So if you make more than that from your normal job or any other income coming in the door, they're going to withhold $1 for every $2 you make. So essentially, they're just going to claw some Social Security back. In the year that you reach your full retirement age, you can still take Social Security, but they're going to give you a little bit more leeway. They're going to say you can make more money. So you can make just about 60 grand a year. And we're only going to withhold $1 for every $3 you make. And that, I know that's kind of a confusing equation, but basically they take some money back if you make too much. After your full retirement age, you can work as much as you want. They're not going to pull any back. Now, I think there's a lot of misconceptions on this, just again, as a kind of pause and look at real life situations, is I think a lot of advisors even get this wrong. It's not a penalty. Social Security is not going to take this money away from you and not give it back to you. So there's a lot of the misconception is that if you're still working, you should not turn on Social Security under your full retirement age. You can still do it. What happens is they're just basically saying, hey, you're making kind of too much, so we're putting some guardrails on you a little bit. And what all they're doing is they're withholding it for later. They're not taking it away from you ever. You're going to get that money back. And so it's essentially it's going to keep growing in Social Security like it would have been if you wouldn't have taken it. So essentially what could happen if you make too much money, it doesn't make sense. But if somebody's that's looking to maybe scale back from work, maybe work part-time, they could still make more than this 22,000, and it still might make sense to turn on Social Security because essentially you're making more income altogether, and then that you might even have a higher payment at your full retirement age because that 35-year working history, you're adding more to your Social Security. So it's a really interesting topic. So I know that's a little confusing, but it's one of these items that definitely see me or see your advisor to talk about if you're in this situation. Okay, so then again, this is more real world planning too. Like when you're looking at Social Security, how does it interact with all the other stuff you have in your retirement? If you don't have much other assets, then turning on Social Security might make sense earlier than later. But if you have any other investments and savings, yep. Well, that was got me off. All right, sorry guys. Let me duplicate that. And we're back. So what I was saying is if you have savings and investments outside Social Security, you got to see how that's going to play into your income plan. Because when we're talking Social Security, really what we're talking about is income planning in retirement. In retirement, if I can spell, you have a budget. And so in retirement, what income is going to cover your budget? Is it going to come from Social Security? Is it come from your savings and investments or maybe pension or your job? And if we're just focusing on this bucket, people that kind of, if I simplify it down, they really have two decisions. If they want to either take Social Security early, so if I turn it on early, that means I don't have to take as much money from my own investments to fund my retirement. So to say that again a different way, if somebody wants to retire early, say 62, they can turn on Social Security at that time, and that way they don't have to deplete their own savings. So some people fall into that bucket. They want to have more control over their savings. So they're okay with taking a reduced Social Security payment. The other decision is, okay, well, I would rather wait. I might retire at the same time. I might retire at 62, but I'm not going to take Social Security till 70 because I really, really want that higher payment. Maybe I have a long longevity in my lifetime projected. So I want that more money later from Social Security. So I'm willing to maybe deplete my own investments to fund my life during that time. Those are the two things you got to weigh. And then job and pension, those things kind of get included in that. But this is my main takeaway on this slide of how do your savings and investments come into play? All right, we're doing pretty good. So I'm going to touch on taxes. I'm not going to go too deep into this. I do a big tax presentation, but let me just ask you all here online, feel free to type it in. Is Social Security taxed? Kind of giving away my slide here, my answer. Yeah, no, that's why I asked. A lot of people are either they fall into the boat of no, it's not because I've already paid into this. I've been taxed that, so it shouldn't be taxed on the way out. Some people are yes, the government taxes me on everything, so I'm going to get taxed. What really is it's right in the middle. It's a sliding scale of if you make more money in retirement outside of Social Security, the more they're going to tax your Social Security. The most that it can be taxed is 85%. So that's confusing. It's just misleading. It doesn't mean that the Social Security is going to be taxed at an 85% tax rate. That'd be crazy. It just means that up to 85% of your payment can be included in your taxable income. So that's a good thing. That's why it's kind of right in the middle. And so if I just focus on married filing jointly, if you make anywhere from 32 to 44 grand in what they call this combined income, then 50% of your Social Security is going to be taxed. I'll run through a little example of this. I'm not going to dive too deep in it. But essentially, Social Security is taxed through this equation or a tax calculation called combined income. Basically, it's a special equation that the IRS does for you that you haven't never really seen before. It's just a part of retirement planning. And what they do is they take your adjusted gross income. So if you're working, you have other income coming in, they'll take your adjusted gross income. That's just basically think of your W-2 job and maybe you contribute to the 401k that comes off your taxable income at that time. That's called adjusted gross. So what they do, let's say you have 30 grand of adjusted gross income. They add back any tax exempt interest that might be like muni bonds. And then they're going to add in 50% of your Social Security benefits. So if somebody's making 30 grand of Social Security, they're going to take half of that of 15 grand and they're going to get this combined number. So if we do 30, 45, 47 grand of combined income. And if I jump between slides here a little bit, if you have 47 grand of combined income and you're married, you're going to end up in this bucket of 85% of your income. Your Social Security is going to be added into your Social Security. Added into your taxable equation. So just know that, yes, it's taxed. It's not going to be taxed all of it. It just depends on what other income you have coming in the door. I'm going to skip through that slide and we're going to talk about our last, so we got maybe call it 5 minutes left here. I like to give you a little brain cleanser, share a little personal story, if you will, on how I think of Social Security. So I kind of say, let's imagine you end up in a foreign country. This is how I think of Social Security. You end up in a foreign country. You don't speak the language. You know, maybe you have a map, but it's written in this different language, but the destination's beautiful. All right. For me, this was Santorini. Has anybody ever been to Santorini in Greece? Are you really? Nice. I'll have to give you the name of this restaurant that this picture is at. It was fantastic. But Santorini, this is me and my wife. She does not know I use these pictures for this presentation, by the way. But this was us on our honeymoon a while back. We were in this foreign country. We had no connection to the foreign country. We don't speak the language. We had the maps, but they drive on the opposite side of the road there, but it is beautiful. We went there just off the cuff, really, is we knew it was beautiful. We heard it was beautiful. So we looked online and we did a bunch of research and it's known for some of the best sunsets in the world. It literally does. It has these blue domed, these are chapels or churches with the white buildings that just line the coast this mountainside of the Aegean Sea. It's beautiful. And these are where you stay. These are hotels that overlook the ocean. And so we, did our research, planned our trip, got the what we thought was the hotel overlooking the sea by these white buildings and blue dome buildings. We planned some excursions on the island as well. But as soon as we got there, this was our view. So we thought we were gonna have this big, beautiful view of the Aegean Sea from, our hotel, but that was our view. And then I kind of joke, we did some excursions. We rented a car. I rented a car online and they gave me this lime green kind of puke colored car. Again, you see these nice, they're all these little cars, but, or smart cars, they call them. All the other smart cars were white and red. So they look nice on the landscape of all these white buildings and blues. They give us this, I call it extra smart cars, green. My wife and I'm 6'3", she's pretty much the same. So we're sticking out the back of this car and, we still got to the destination, but, it wasn't as good. So how I kind of ended is, we talked to the locals. We, uncovered a bunch of hidden gems, great food and beaches, and even found some things that, were close to home, like, Giannis jersey out of Greece. So it's very similar, my trip to Greece in Social Security planning. You can get there by just doing some research, but use your resources. Make sure you look into these things we've talked about, and it'll help you get there. So anyways, I use that as kind of a palate cleanser because Social Security can be a lot to talk about. And so the last thing is how does your Social Security kind of work with your spouse if you're married? And it's really not too complicated anymore. There used to be a lot of different things that you could do on claiming strategies with your spouse, but that's been kind of trimmed out of the Social Security. Really what you have to do is, I call this just your basic kind of graph it out or put it on a table. See what your monthly numbers are going to be and figure out what the best option is going to be. And usually a simple option, a simple decision for people is going to be revolving around survivor benefits. So there's really a lot of people fall into, I'd call it two different categories. Maybe the husband and wife or spouses work similar jobs. Maybe they have similar social securities, or they're going to have close to similar social securities. What would benefit them is maybe having one spouse take it early and one spouse take it later. So essentially you have a little smaller payment with a bigger payment. And why that's important is the surviving spouse. So God forbid one spouse passes away, the larger of the two payments continues on to the surviving spouse. So that's a simple thing you can do. The other kind of thing that you see is that maybe one spouse was the working spouse and the other spouse was at home. So that spouse has a bigger benefit than the spouse that didn't work. So they might have a very small benefit because they weren't working. They're taking care of the kids or at home. And so they call this spousal benefits. And so what can happen is if your spouse has, they can basically claim off your own benefits. They say you can claim off your benefits of your spouse's earnings, and you can receive up to 50% of your spouse's benefit. So if somebody didn't work at all, they can still get, it's almost a freebie. If you see this happen in real life, it's actually kind of a nice freebie. If somebody's getting, just using easy math, $2,000, the working spouse is going to get $2,000 a month in Social Security at their full retirement age. Their spouse can elect Social Security even if they never worked and get $1,000 a month. So that's called the spousal benefit, and that's still out there. Restricted applications are kind of gone away, so I'm not going to touch on that. So I'm just going to summarize it here. Thanks for bearing with me here. We're pretty much on time. I like to be early on this and leave any time for questions. But really what we talked about is if you decide to claim your benefits early here on the left side, you're gonna fall into this boat. You're gonna say, I just kind of need the income right away. That's gonna help you make the decision. Some people want to take the money and invest it. That'll help you make that decision. Some people have they want to delay having to take funds from their investments. And that's really what I see in real life. This is kind of the kicker that makes people decide to take it earlier. And then your spouse might want to claim benefits, delay to claim benefits. That could be a reason to take it earlier. But if you're on the later side, what's going to make you push to take it later is you just want that higher monthly benefit. Maybe you have the longevity. Maybe you want to do what we were just talking about. You want to have a higher income number to go on to the surviving spouse. Maybe you want to work longer. So if you do work a good job, there is that case to where maybe not taking Social Security till later is an option. Or if you want to take spousal benefits and switch your own later. We didn't talk about that too much. But again, when you claim matters, it is going to be one of the biggest financial decisions you make. It's not a wrong answer to do it, but there is certain ways to maximize it. That's what we're talking about. The rules are still complicated, even though the answer or the question, the main question we've been talking about is, do you turn it on at 62, your FRA, or 70, or anywhere in between that? There's a lot that goes into that question to answer it. If there's a lot of different options, use your professional advice in your corners to do that. And this we haven't really talked about. And that's all I really have for today. So I like to end it here is that a lot of times people, what I like to do is create action out of these presentations. And so what you can do is definitely do this on your own. There's a lot of DIY types of planning out there. Use your resources for that. Take this information back to your own advisors or own, financial people in your corner if you have them. I'll give you an opportunity to work with myself and my team if you want to, but don't procrastinate. If you don't do anything, you don't reach your financial goals. So again, we talked about this at the beginning, but for those of you still online as well, what you get is a consultation out of this. So I will ask if you guys don't mind pulling out your evaluation workshops. Check the box either yes or no, you want to sign up for consultation. That would help me out there. If you want to do the consultation, I'll get in touch with you in a day or two here and we'll sign that up. Again, let me jump down to this slide. I think this is good to know. How these meetings work is they're usually 2 meetings. First meeting is in these consultations is we'll just talk about, a lot of times I call it the low-hanging fruit questions that you had from the presentation or from the things going on in your life, and we'll answer those. But then I'll get like the facts and figures from you, the goals from your life, and I'll take those back and do some homework and build you the financial plan and the Social Security analysis. And then I'll come back in a second meeting. And again, we can do that in person, virtual. We can do it here or your house or my office. And I'll deliver you that financial plan and the Social Security analysis. From there, it'll be your decision to take any recommendations or not from there. That's all included in the plan. And then, oh, these are just some other slides. I like to say, stop using Google and stop using what your neighbor told you was the best option. I get that all the time. My neighbor said, wait till 70. Well, I just went through that. That's not always the best case. So, it's all individualized planning and use the experts in your field. I always say, in any meetings we do, we're looking at these things, making sure, I kind of joke, the ex-wife or ex-spouse isn't on your beneficiaries. We see that all the time. So, we'll be thorough for you. The SSA.gov, that's the place to go to for your Social Security number. So if you don't have an account there, it is recommended to go set up an account, look at your numbers. I have seen them where they're wrong, so it can happen. Maybe an incorrect tax reporting went to the SSA, so you can correct those, but just get a hold of your numbers. They used to send out those big green sheets. They're going to start doing that again, I believe. I think maybe to certain age groups every couple of years. Has anybody seen those by chance? Have you seen? Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. But that's all I have. So thank you guys for joining in person, and thank you guys online. Hopefully this was a little bit insightful. Some disclosures here. Osaic is my back office. And none of this is for advice. It's just for education purposes. So I'll stay on here for a minute. Questions.